My brother humiliated me at our father's funeral in front of 300 people. But when my quiet sister took the microphone, she revealed secrets about me that shocked everyone in that room. What she said next changed my life forever. Here's what happened. My name is Lily, and I'm 30 years old. I make a living as an independent writer, which, well, let's just say it's not exactly what my family had in mind for me. 3 weeks ago, my father passed away. Richard Campbell. If you've ever heard that name in Boston's legal circles, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Chairman of Campbell and Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms on the East Coast. The kind of man who commanded respect just by walking into a room. The memorial service was held at St. Michael's Cathedral downtown. You know the one, those towering Gothic spires that make you feel small just looking at them. The place was packed. I'm talking wall-to-wall people. Business executives, judges, politicians, old family friends. Anyone who was anyone in Boston seemed to be there. I was sitting in the third row, wearing the only black dress I owned that didn't scream struggling writer. My brother Marcus was up at the podium looking every inch the successful attorney he'd become. Tailored suit, perfect posture, that confident voice that had won him countless cases. He'd been speaking for about 10 minutes, sharing memories of Dad's professional achievements, his dedication to justice, his unwavering principles. The usual stuff you'd expect at a memorial for someone like my father. But then something shifted in Marcus's tone. My father, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the cathedral's sound system, always believed in maintaining the highest standards. He taught us that excellence wasn't just expected, it was demanded. I remember thinking that was a nice sentiment. Dad was definitely a perfectionist. Marcus paused, scanning the crowd with those cold blue eyes that reminded me so much of our father. Unfortunately, he continued, and I swear I felt my stomach drop before he even finished the sentence. Not all of his children were able to live up to those standards. The silence that followed was deafening. You could literally hear a pin drop in that massive cathedral. 300 people, and not one of them made a sound. I felt every eye in that room turn toward me. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, but I kept my chin up, my hands folded in my lap. I'd learned a long time ago how to disappear inside myself when moments like this happened. But this was different. This wasn't just family dinner where Dad would make his little comments about my hobby writing. This was public. This was in front of everyone who mattered in his world. And my brother had just told them all that I was the family disappointment. To understand why that moment hit me like a freight train, you need to know about the Campbell family dynamics. We weren't just any family. We were the Campbell family. Fourth-generation lawyers with a reputation that went back to the 1920s. My father built his empire on 3 principles: excellence, tradition, and results. Our dinner conversations weren't about how our day went. They were about achievements, test scores, awards, and accolades. The Campbell name meant something in this city, and Dad made sure we never forgot it. Growing up, I was the odd one out from day one. While Marcus was devouring legal textbooks at age 12 and winning debate tournaments, I was hiding in my room writing poetry and short stories. When other kids were playing sports, I was at the library reading everything from Emily Dickinson to Maya Angelou. Dad used to look at my report cards and shake his head. Not because my grades were bad, they were actually pretty good, but because my teacher's comments were always the same: Lily shows exceptional creativity in her writing, or she has a unique perspective on literature. To him, that wasn't praise. That was a problem. Marcus, on the other hand, he was everything Dad wanted in a son. Valedictorian, Harvard Law School Order of the Coif Federal Clerkship, the whole golden path. By the time he was 25, people were already calling him a prodigy. Dad would beam with pride whenever anyone mentioned Marcus's name. "That's my boy," he'd say. "He's going to take this firm places I never could." Then there was Mia, my little sister, 3 years younger than me. Mia was, well, she was the quiet one. While Marcus was the star and I was the disappointment, Mia just kind of existed in the background. She was smart, really smart, but she never pushed for attention the way Marcus did, and she never caused the kind of problems I did with my artistic pursuits. But here's the thing about Mia that nobody else seemed to notice: she was always watching, always listening. When Dad would make his cutting remarks about my little writing hobby at dinner, I'd catch Mia's eyes across the table. She never said anything, but I could see it there. This quiet understanding, this solidarity. When I won my first writing contest in high school, Mia was the only one who remembered to congratulate me. When I got my piece published in the school literary magazine, she kept a copy in her room. When Dad refused to come to my college graduation, because I was majoring in English literature instead of pre-law, Mia drove 4 hours by herself to be there. She never made a big deal about it. That wasn't Mia's style, but she was always there in her quiet way, making sure I knew that at least one person in the Campbell family saw me for who I really was. Not that it made family gatherings any easier. The older we got, the more obvious it became that I was never going to fit the Campbell mold. And Dad stopped pretending to be okay with it. The breaking point came when I was 22. Marcus had just been offered a partnership track position at a rival firm. Huge news in Boston legal circles. The Massachusetts Bar Association was throwing this massive award ceremony, and Marcus was receiving the Rising Star Award. I remember getting dressed for the event, actually excited for once. I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe Dad would be so proud of Marcus that he'd finally have some leftover warmth for me too. I was waiting by the front door when Dad came downstairs in his tuxedo. He looked at me, then at Marcus, then back at me. His expression, it was like he was seeing something distasteful. "Lily," he said, his voice flat and cold, "I think it's better if you stay home tonight." I felt my stomach drop. "What? Why?" "This is an important event for your brother, for our family's reputation. The people there, they're the kind of people who matter in this business." I stared at him, not understanding. "I'm your daughter. You're not dressed appropriately for this crowd. You don't understand how to conduct yourself at these functions." He paused, and what came next still echoes in my head to this day. "Frankly, Lily, you're not the kind of person who belongs in that room." Marcus just stood there, said nothing, did nothing, just adjusted his bow tie and avoided my eyes. That was the night I realized I wasn't just the black sheep of the family. I was invisible. Worse than invisible. I was a liability. Things got worse after Mom died 2 years later. She was the buffer between Dad and me, the one who'd quietly slip me $20 when he wasn't looking, who'd ask about my writing when he was out of earshot. When she was gone, there was no one left to soften his edges. The final blow came during my senior year of college. I called Dad to tell him about a scholarship I'd received for my master's program in English literature. I was so excited. It was a full ride to Columbia, one of the most competitive programs in the country. "Absolutely not," he said. "You've wasted enough time on this nonsense. You can finish your bachelor's degree, but after that, you're getting a real job." "Dad, this is a real opportunity. I could become a professor or a published author, or you could contribute something meaningful to society." "Lily, I'm not funding any more of this creative writing fantasy. You want to pursue this path, you do it on your own dime." And he meant it. The monthly allowance stopped. The credit card was canceled. My tuition payments cut off mid-semester. I had to take out loans, work 3 part-time jobs, and live in a studio apartment the size of a closet. But I finished my degree. And you know what? I was proud of myself for the first time in years. After graduation, I started a blog called Healing Through Words. It was a place where I shared my own experiences with family rejection, toxic relationships, and finding your voice when everyone around you tries to silence it. I wrote about using creativity as therapy, about finding strength in vulnerability. The response was incredible. Within 6 months, I had thousands of followers. People were sharing their own stories, supporting each other, finding hope in the community we'd built. When Dad found out about it, he was furious. I'll never forget the phone call. "Lily, what is this garbage you're posting online? Do you have any idea how this reflects on our family name? It's helping people, Dad. Real people who are struggling with. It's embarrassing pseudo-psychology nonsense. This healing through creativity garbage. It's not real therapy, Lily. It's feel-good fluff for people who don't want to deal with their actual problems." He demanded I shut it down. Said it was hurting his reputation that potential clients were asking him about his new-age daughter who thinks she's a therapist. I didn't shut it down, but I also didn't call him back after that conversation. For 3 years, we barely spoke. Holiday cards, maybe a brief text on birthdays. That was it. The silence was deafening, but somehow it was also liberating. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking on eggshells trying to be someone I wasn't just to earn a fraction of his approval. Those 3 years of silence, they changed everything for me. My blog had grown into something I never imagined. What started as a personal outlet became a movement. I was getting messages from people all over the world, survivors of narcissistic families, adult children of emotionally absent parents, people who felt invisible in their own lives. So I took a leap. I started Phoenix Publishing, a small press focused exclusively on books about emotional healing and personal growth. Not self-help fluff, but real honest accounts from people who'd survived toxic families, abusive relationships, and found their way back to themselves. Our first book was written by a woman who'd escaped a cult-like family environment. It became a bestseller on Amazon. The second was by a man who'd overcome decades of childhood emotional neglect. Also, a bestseller. 3 months before Dad died, I received the Community Impact Award from the Massachusetts Mental Health Alliance. It was for outstanding contribution to mental health awareness through literary advocacy. The ceremony was small but meaningful, a room full of therapists, social workers, and survivors who understood the work we were doing. I posted a photo on social media that night, me holding the award, genuinely smiling for the first time in years. The caption read, "Sometimes the path you're told you shouldn't take is exactly where you're meant to be." I didn't tag any family members. I didn't expect them to care. But somehow Dad saw it. 3 days later, Mia called me. "Lily," she said, her voice careful. "Dad saw your post about the award." My heart stopped. And there was a long pause. He didn't say anything, but he stared at his phone for like 10 minutes. I've never seen him look at your pictures that long. I didn't know what to make of that. Was it regret, pride, confusion? I'd given up trying to decode Dad's emotions years ago. 2 weeks later, Mia called again. This time, she was crying. "Dad's in the hospital," she said. "It's his heart. It's bad, Lily." I drove to Boston that night. When I got to the ICU, Marcus was already there talking to doctors, making arrangements, being the responsible son. He barely acknowledged me when I walked in. Dad was unconscious, hooked up to machines that beeped and whirred. He looked so small in that hospital bed. So fragile. Nothing like the imposing figure who dominated my childhood. I sat with him for 3 hours that first night. Marcus came and went, fielding phone calls from colleagues and clients. Mia held vigil in the corner chair, refusing to leave. Dad never woke up while I was there. He died 2 days later. The funeral planning was, well, it was exactly what you'd expect. Marcus took charge immediately. He met with the funeral director, chose the casket, selected, the flowers arranged, the catering. He handled everything with the same methodical efficiency he brought to his legal practice. I offered to help, but Marcus made it clear my input wasn't needed. "I've got this handled, Lily," he said during one of our brief phone conversations. "This needs to be done right. Dad would want it done with dignity." The implication was obvious. I couldn't be trusted with something this important. When it came time to assign speakers for the memorial service, Marcus didn't even consult me. He'd arranged for himself to give the main eulogy, of course. A family friend would share memories from Dad's early career. A colleague would speak about his professional achievements. "What about me?" I asked when he ran through the program. Marcus looked genuinely surprised by the question. What about you? I'm his daughter too, Marcus. Don't I get to say anything? Lily, this isn't the place for... you and Dad didn't exactly... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Didn't exactly have a relationship because that was his choice and not mine. Look, there's going to be a lot of important people there. Judges, partners from major firms, city officials. We need to keep this focused on Dad's legacy, his achievements. Not... He gestured vaguely in my direction. Not his disappointment of a daughter. Marcus didn't answer, which was answer enough. So, there I was the morning of the memorial service, sitting in the third row like a stranger. Not in the front row with family. Not given a chance to speak about the man who raised me, however imperfectly. Just another face in the crowd watching my brother control the narrative of our father's life. But then about halfway through Marcus's speech, I felt a gentle touch on my arm. Mia had slipped out of her seat in the second row and moved to sit beside me. She leaned close and whispered, "This isn't right. You should be up there." I shook my head. "It's fine. This is Marcus's show." "No," she said, and there was something different in her voice. Something I'd never heard before. Determination. "It's not fine. You're Dad's daughter too. You have just as much right to speak as Marcus does." I looked at her, surprised by the fire in her eyes. "Maybe after he's finished," she whispered, "you should go up there anyway." Before I could respond, Marcus dropped his bombshell about Dad's standards and how not all his children lived up to them. The room went silent, and in that silence I felt Mia's hand squeeze mine. "Now," she whispered. "Go now." But I couldn't move. I was frozen in that pew, feeling like I was 12 years old again, being told I wasn't good enough to sit at the adult table. Marcus continued his speech, completely oblivious to the shockwaves he'd just sent through the room. Or maybe he wasn't oblivious. Maybe this was intentional. "My father taught me that success isn't just about what you accomplish." He went on, his voice carrying that same confident tone he used in courtrooms. "It's about how you carry yourself, how you represent your family name, how you contribute to something larger than yourself." I could feel people stealing glances in my direction. Judge Morrison, who'd known our family for 20 years. Mrs. Patterson from the country club. Dad's old law school roommate. They all knew exactly who Marcus was talking about. "Richard Campbell didn't just build a law firm," Marcus continued. "He built a legacy, a standard of excellence that will outlive all of us. He believed that every Campbell should aspire to greatness, should strive to make their mark on the world in a meaningful way." Another pause. Another pointed look in my direction. "He often said that the greatest tragedy in life isn't failure. It's wasted potential. It's choosing the easy path instead of the right path. It's settling for mediocrity when you could achieve excellence." My hands were shaking now. I pressed them together in my lap, trying to maintain some semblance of composure, but inside I was screaming. This wasn't a eulogy, this was a character assassination. At our father's funeral, Dad believed in accountability, Marcus said, his voice getting stronger, more emphatic. He believed that actions have consequences and that we all have a responsibility to live up to the gifts we've been given. He had no patience for excuses, no tolerance for self-indulgence, and no sympathy for those who chose to waste their talents on... He paused, searching for the right words. On pursuits that don't serve the greater good. The cathedral was so quiet you could hear the old heating system rattling in the walls. 300 people holding their breath, waiting to see how this would play out. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to sink through the floor and never come back. But I also wanted to stand up and scream. I wanted to tell everyone in that room about the nights I'd spent helping Dad with his cases when Mom was sick. About the times I'd driven him to medical appointments, when Marcus was too busy with his own career. About the letters I'd written to him that he never answered, the calls I'd made, that he never returned. But I didn't do any of those things. I just sat there, my face burning with shame, while my brother systematically destroyed what was left of my relationship with our father's memory. In closing, Marcus said, straightening his tie, I want to say that Richard Campbell's true legacy isn't just in the law firm he built or the cases he won. It's in the example he set for those of us who are willing to follow it. Those of us who understood that being a Campbell means something, that it comes with responsibilities and expectations. He looked directly at me then, and I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Not just disappointment or frustration, but actual contempt. Dad always said that the Campbell name was earned, not given, and that not everyone who carries it deserves it. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could feel tears building behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I would not give Marcus the satisfaction of seeing me break down in public. But then something unexpected happened. I felt Mia's hand slip into mine, her fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture of solidarity that caught me completely off guard. She leaned close to my ear and whispered, He's wrong, you know, about everything. Marcus was wrapping up now, thanking everyone for coming, inviting them to join the family for refreshments in the parish hall. The family, as if I weren't sitting right there. As people began to shift in their seats, preparing to file out, Mia suddenly stood up. Not to leave, but to walk toward the front of the church. Mia, I whispered urgently, what are you doing? She turned back to me, and for the first time in my life, I saw my quiet little sister look absolutely fearless. What someone should have done a long time ago, she said. And then she walked straight up to the podium where Marcus was still standing, basking in the polite applause from the congregation. Marcus looked confused as Mia approached the podium. The congregation was murmuring now, unsure of what was happening. This wasn't part of the program. Excuse me, Marcus said, stepping slightly in front of the microphone. Mia, what are you? But Mia didn't stop. She walked right up to him and I could see her lips moving as she said something I couldn't hear. Whatever it was, it made Marcus step back, his face flushing with anger. Father Mackenzie, who'd been officiating the service, looked uncertain. He glanced between Marcus and Mia, then out at the congregation, clearly unsure of the protocol for this situation. Mia turned to him with a calm smile. Father, I'd like to say a few words about my father, if that's all right. I have something to say, not just for him, but for my sister. The priest nodded slowly. Of course, dear. Marcus looked like he wanted to object, but what could he do? Storm off the altar at his own father's funeral? He stepped aside, his jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. Mia adjusted the microphone with steady hands. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong, nothing like the quiet background presence she'd been our entire lives. Thank you all for being here today, she began. I know my brother has shared his memories of our father, and they're all true. Dad was an accomplished man, a successful lawyer, a pillar of this community. She paused, looking out at the crowd with a confidence I'd never seen from her before. But there are some things about the Campbell family that I think you should know. Things that didn't make it into Marcus's speech. I felt my stomach drop. What was she doing 3 years ago when Dad had his first heart attack? The one most of you probably don't know about because he didn't want it to affect his business. There was only one person who dropped everything to take care of him. Mia's eyes found mine in the crowd. My sister Lily drove up from New York every weekend for 6 months. She cooked his meals, drove him to cardiac rehab, organized his medications, and sat with him during those long, scary nights when he couldn't sleep because he was afraid his heart might stop. The murmur in the crowd grew louder. I could see people turning to look at me, their expression shifting from judgment to confusion. Marcus was busy with a big case. Mia continued, her voice never wavering. I was in graduate school, but Lily just showed up week after week. She never asked for recognition, never expected gratitude. She just did what needed to be done because she loved him. My throat was getting tight. This wasn't how I remembered it. Yes, I'd helped Dad during his recovery, but it hadn't felt like love. It had felt like desperation, one last attempt to prove I was worthy of being his daughter. But that's not all, Mia said, and now her voice was getting stronger, more passionate. You see, my sister doesn't just write books. She changes lives. Her publishing company has donated over $50,000 in the past 2 years to support literacy programs for kids with autism. Kids who struggle to communicate just like our cousin Jake did before Lily's books helped him find his voice. I had no idea Mia knew about the autism programs. I'd never mentioned them to anyone in the family. She's funded scholarships for 12 low-income students to attend writing workshops, students who couldn't afford to pursue their dreams otherwise. She's created a support network for adult children of emotionally distant parents that now has chapters in 34 states. People were staring at me now, but it felt different. The judgment was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. And 5 years ago, Mia said, her voice breaking slightly for the first time, when our cousin Emma was dying of leukemia and needed a bone marrow transplant, there was only one match in our family. Oh no, she wasn't going to. Lily underwent the procedure without telling anyone. She took a week off work, told us she had the flu, and saved Emma's life. Emma, who just graduated from college last month, who's getting married next spring. Who's alive because my sister was willing to endure excruciating pain to save someone who'd barely spoken to her in years. The cathedral was dead silent now. I could see Marcus's face from where I sat, and he looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. So, when my brother talks about living up to the Campbell name, Mia said, looking directly at Marcus, I want you all to know that no one in this family has lived up to it better than Lily. She's accomplished things that matter. She's helped people who needed help. She's shown grace and compassion and strength that I can only hope to someday match. Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't even try to stop them. Dad may not have understood Lily's path, Mia continued, but in those final weeks when I was the only one visiting him regularly, you know what, he talked about her award, her publishing company, the article he'd found online about her work with trauma survivors. He was proud of her. He was just too stubborn to admit it while he was alive. She turned to look at me directly. Lily, I'm sorry it took me 30 years to find my voice, but I'm using it now to tell everyone in this room what I should have told Dad years ago. You are the best of us. You always have been. When Mia finished speaking, the silence in the cathedral was different. Not uncomfortable this time, but thoughtful. People were processing what they'd just heard, looking at me with completely different eyes than they had an hour earlier. Mia walked back to our pew with the same quiet dignity she'd always carried, but something fundamental had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore. She'd made herself seen, and she'd made sure I was seen too. Father Mackenzie wrapped up the service with a brief closing prayer, and then people began to file out slowly, many of them stopping to speak with me as they passed. Gentle touches on the shoulder whispered words of encouragement, expressions of sympathy that felt genuine for the first time all day. But Marcus was furious. I could see him up at the front of the church, his face red, gesticulating angrily as he spoke to Father Mackenzie. The priest looked uncomfortable, nodding politely but clearly wanting to extract himself from whatever Marcus was saying. As soon as the last of the congregation had filtered out, Marcus stormed over to us. His composure from the podium was completely gone. What the hell was that? He hissed, his voice echoing in the now empty cathedral. Mia, how dare you make a spectacle of Dad's funeral? Mia stood up slowly, and I was amazed by how calm she looked. I told the truth, Marcus. Something you apparently forgot to do during your speech. The truth, Marcus's voice was getting louder. You turned Dad's memorial service into some kind of therapy session for Lily. This was supposed to be about honoring his memory, not airing family drama. Whose family drama? I asked, finally finding my voice. You're the one who decided to humiliate me in front of 300 people. Marcus whirled on me. Humiliate you? I was telling the truth about Dad's values, about what he expected from his children. If you felt humiliated, maybe that says more about your choices than it does about my speech. Your speech was cruel, Mia said quietly. And it was wrong. Dad wasn't perfect, but he didn't raise us to tear each other down in public. Oh, don't lecture me about family loyalty, Marcus shot back. Where was Lily for the past 3 years? Where was she when Dad was building his legacy, when he needed support from his children? She was off playing writer, pretending her little blog was going to change the world. Her little blog has helped thousands of people. Mia said. More than you've helped anyone except your corporate clients. I put my hand on Mia's arm. It's okay, I said. Let's just go. But Marcus wasn't done. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle any criticism, any accountability. You just run away when things get difficult. I ran away. I turned back to face him. Marcus, I called Dad every month for 3 years. Every single month. He never picked up. I sent him cards on his birthday on holidays. I invited him to my award ceremony. I even sent him copies of my books. He never responded to any of it. Because he was disappointed, Marcus exploded. Because you wasted your potential on some feel-good nonsense instead of doing something meaningful with your life. She saved Emma's life, Mia said, her voice deadly quiet. She took care of Dad when he was sick. She's built a business that actually helps people instead of just making money off their problems. How is that not meaningful? Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, we heard footsteps echoing across the cathedral floor. Excuse me, a voice called out. We turned to see an older man approaching us. Distinguished, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit. I recognized him vaguely from Dad's law firm, but couldn't place the name. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said as he reached us. I'm William Harrison. I was your father's law partner for 15 years before I retired. Marcus straightened up immediately. Mr. Harrison, of course. Thank you so much for coming today. But Harrison wasn't looking at Marcus. He was looking directly at me. Lily, he said, I wanted to speak with you before you left. I nodded, unsure where this was going. Your father talked about you more than you might think, Harrison said gently, especially in these last few years. He used to show me articles about your publishing company pictures from your social media. He was proud of you. He just didn't know how to say it. I felt my breath catch in my throat. After your mother died, Richard became harder, more closed off. He had very specific ideas about success, about what it meant to carry on the family name. But in private, when it was just the two of us having a drink after a long day, he would talk about your work. Harrison glanced at Marcus, then back at me. He told me about the bone marrow donation. Said he'd never seen courage like that, the way you just quietly did what needed to be done without expecting recognition. He said, Harrison paused, choosing his words carefully. He said he'd raised a son who could win cases, but he'd raised a daughter who could save lives. The parking lot was quiet, except for the sound of car doors closing as the last of the funeral guests departed. Marcus, Mia, and I stood there, in the shadow of the cathedral, processing what we'd just heard. He was proud of you, Lily, Harrison continued. He was just too stubborn to admit he'd been wrong about your path. Too proud to apologize for the things he'd said, the support he'd withdrawn. But he knew. In the end, he knew. With that, Harrison shook my hand, nodded to Marcus and Mia, and walked away, leaving us standing there in the autumn afternoon. Everything we thought we knew about our family suddenly turned upside down. In the weeks following Dad's funeral, something unexpected happened. Word about what Mia had said at the memorial service began to spread. Not through gossip or social media drama, but through the people who'd been there, the judges, the lawyers, the community leaders who'd witnessed her speech. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Dr. Sarah Chen at Boston University. She ran a psychology conference called Resilience and Recovery and wanted to know if I'd be willing to speak about my experience with family rejection and healing. We heard about your work, she said, but more importantly, we heard about your story, about how you've turned personal pain into a mission to help others. That's exactly the kind of message our attendees need to hear. I almost said no. Speaking about my family dynamics in front of mental health professionals felt terrifying. But then I thought about all the emails I'd received from readers over the years. People who felt invisible in their own families, who thought they were alone in their struggles. So I said yes. The speech I gave was called Healing Through Rejection, Finding Your Worth When Family Can't See It. I talked about growing up feeling like a stranger in my own home, about the difference between disappointing someone and being a disappointment about learning to validate yourself when the people who are supposed to love you most can't seem to manage it. The response was overwhelming. After the event, I had a line of people waiting to talk to me. Therapists who wanted to refer clients to my books, adult children of narcissistic parents who needed to know. They weren't crazy parents who were struggling to understand their own children better. Within a month, I was booked for 6 more speaking engagements. Universities, therapy conferences, support group meetings. Each time I spoke, more people reached out. My email inbox was flooded with stories that mirrored my own. But the most surprising response came from Mia. 2 months after the funeral, she called me on a Tuesday evening. I was in my apartment in New York, editing a manuscript when my phone rang. Lily. She said, "I need to tell you something. I'm quitting my job." Mia had been working as a financial analyst at a prestigious investment firm in Boston. Good salary, excellent benefits, the kind of stable career path that Dad would have approved of. Why? "Because I've been watching what you're doing," she said. "These speaking engagements, the way you're helping people. I want to be part of that. I want to help you build something bigger." I was speechless. "I've been thinking about this since the funeral," Mia continued. "I'm tired of sitting in the background of being the quiet one who doesn't rock the boat. You showed me that it's possible to live authentically even when your family doesn't understand. And now I want to use my voice too." Within 3 months, Mia had moved to New York and become my business partner. We expanded Phoenix Publishing and launched a new initiative called Rising Phoenix, a program specifically designed for young women who were struggling with family rejection, toxic relationships, or emotional neglect. The program combined group therapy, creative writing workshops, and practical life skills training. We partnered with licensed therapists, but the core of the program was peer support, women helping other women realize they weren't alone, that their experiences were valid, that they could build chosen families when their biological families failed them. Our first cohort had 12 participants. Within 6 months, we had a waiting list of over 200 women. Marcus, meanwhile, became a ghost in our lives. He sent a formal letter through his law firm demanding his share of Dad's estate and making it clear that he considered our business ventures to be an exploitation of family tragedy for financial gain. We could have fought him. We could have tried to explain that the money from Phoenix Publishing was being reinvested into the programs, that neither Mia nor I were getting rich off of other people's pain. But we didn't. Instead, we did something that would have been unthinkable to the old version of myself. We let him go. We gave him his inheritance. We removed him from our emergency contact lists, and we stopped trying to have a relationship with someone who clearly didn't want one. It was heartbreaking, but it was also liberating. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking on eggshells around a family member who saw me as a disappointment. The most meaningful thing we did that year was establish the Grace Campbell Memorial Fund, named after our mother. The fund provided scholarships for young women to attend college, specifically targeting students who weren't receiving family support for their education. When we announced the fund, something beautiful happened. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years began reaching out. Aunt Patricia, who remembered how I used to write stories for her kids when they were little. Cousin David, who told me he'd been following my career online and was proud of what I'd accomplished. Even Emma, the cousin whose life I'd helped save with my bone marrow donation, called to thank me and to volunteer for the scholarship selection committee. It turned out there were people in my extended family who had been quietly watching my journey, quietly cheering me on, but who hadn't felt comfortable speaking up while Dad was alive and disapproving. Building these connections, creating this chosen family of relatives who actually saw and valued me, felt like coming home in a way I'd never experienced before. Not the home I'd grown up in, but the home I'd always deserved. A year later, I was sitting in a rocking chair in the nursery of my Brooklyn apartment, holding my 3-week-old daughter. Her name is Hope. Hope Grace Campbell Rivera, named after the future I'd finally learned to believe in, and the mother who would have loved her so much. The nursery walls were painted a soft yellow, with bookshelves already filled with children's stories and poetry collections. There was a letter from our latest Rising Phoenix graduate sitting on the changing table. I've been reading thank you notes from program participants while Hope napped. This particular letter was from a young woman named Jessica who joined our program after being disowned by her parents for choosing art school over medical school. She wrote, "For the first time in my life, I understand that my worth isn't determined by other people's approval. You and Mia taught me that I can build my own family, create my own definition of success, and still honor the best parts of where I came from while leaving behind the parts that hurt me." As I read her words, hope stirred in my arms, making those tiny newborn sounds that melt your heart. I looked down at her perfect little face and made her a promise. "You're going to grow up knowing you're loved exactly as you are," I whispered. "You're going to know that your dreams matter, that your voice matters, that you don't have to earn love by being someone you're not." The funny thing is, I never could have made that promise if I hadn't learned it myself first. And I couldn't have learned it without Mia standing up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself. That moment at Dad's funeral when Mia walked to that podium and told the truth about who I really was, that changed everything. Not just because it vindicated me in front of all those people, but because it showed me what it looked like when someone truly sees you and decides you're worth defending. Mia taught me that sometimes the people who love us most aren't the ones who've known us longest, but the ones who choose to really see us and then choose to speak up. She showed me that being quiet doesn't mean you're weak, and finding your voice doesn't mean you have to be loud. You just have to be brave. Today, Phoenix Publishing has helped hundreds of people tell their stories. The Rising Phoenix program has graduated over 300 young women who are now building lives they're proud of. The Grace Campbell Memorial Fund has sent 42 students to college. Marcus and I haven't spoken since the funeral. But you know what? That's okay. I've learned that you can love someone and still choose not to accept their treatment of you. You can honor your family name by becoming the best version of yourself, even if that version doesn't match what they expected. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give the people who are still stuck in patterns of criticism and disappointment is to model what it looks like to be free. I'm 31 now, and for the first time in my life, I wake up every morning excited about the person I am and the life I'm building. I have a daughter who will grow up in a house where creativity is celebrated, where different is beautiful, where love isn't conditional on performance. I have a sister who found her voice and used it to change both our lives. I have a business that turns pain into purpose. I have a chosen family of relatives and friends and colleagues who see me for who I really am. Most importantly, I have the knowledge that my worth was never up for debate. I just had to stop waiting for someone else's permission to claim it. Sometimes, it takes someone else standing up for you to teach you how to stand up for yourself. But once you learn that lesson, once you really understand your own value, no one can ever make you feel invisible again. Have you ever found strength from an unexpected ally? Someone who saw your worth when you couldn't see it yourself, who spoke up for you when you couldn't find your voice. I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that you're not alone in feeling like the odd one, out in your own family, please subscribe. Because everyone deserves to know that their dreams are valid, their voice matters, and they have the right to build a life that makes them proud, even if it's not the life anyone else expected. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Share your own story of finding unexpected allies in the comments below. I read every single one. And remember, your voice matters even when others can't hear it yet. I'll see you in the next story.